A mahogany box mocked me from my porch, its silver trim gleaming like a trader's blade under the Texas sun. Cuban cigars lavish, deadly sent for my 68th birthday by someone who knew my lungs, scarred from Vietnam's poison clouds, could never take a puff. They sent death, wrapped in luxury, to choke the life from a man who fought for theirs. The betrayal rips deeper than any shrapnel, a wound so raw it screams. My own blood, my own child, aimed to bury me. I'm Frank Sullivan, 68 years old, a vet who survived hell, but this gift was my execution. My house in Lubbock, Texas, sits at the end of a dusty road, 500 feet from the nearest neighbor. It's a small place, walls lined with faded photos and bronze stars from Vietnam, gathering dust like my memories. At 68, my lungs rattle from Agent Orange, a souvenir from jungles that still haunt my dreams. I quit smoking a decade ago, but the scars in my chest don't fade. Sarah, my only daughter, used to sit on that worn couch, her tiny hands tracing my medals, begging for stories of choppers and foxholes. Now, she's a stranger, 38 years old, married to Mike Turner, a spineless man drowning in her debts. 5 years of silence, broken only by her calls for money, always money. Last Sunday, I took that cursed mahogany box to the VFW hall, where old vets swap lies over cheap beer. Tom Baxter, my old squad mate, was there, his laugh as rough as gravel. "Frank, you don't smoke these?" he asked, eyeing the cigars. "Nah, Tom," I said, sliding the box across the bar. "My lungs can't handle it. They're yours." His eyes lit up like I'd handed him a piece of gold. I thought Sarah's gift was a rare kindness, a bridge across our rift. But as I drove my pickup truck the 2 miles home, a chill settled in my bones. Something was wrong. That box wasn't love, it was a trap. The Lubbock sun had barely set when my phone buzzed, shattering the quiet of my living room. It was Betty, Tom Baxter's wife, her voice cracking like dry kindling. "Frank, it's Tom," she said. "He's in the hospital." Collapsed at the VFW hall, gasping for air like he was drowning on dry land. My heart lurched, a cold fist squeezing my chest. I grabbed my keys, the old pickup truck rattling as I sped the 3 miles to Lubbock Memorial Hospital. The cigars, those damn cigars I'd given him. My mind raced, replaying Sarah's sharp handwriting on that card, the mahogany box glinting like a loaded gun. The hospital reeked of antiseptic and dread, fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. I found Tom in the ICU, tubes snaking from his arms, his face gray as the ash he loved to flick from his cigarettes. Betty sat beside him, her hands clutching a crumpled tissue, her eyes red and hollow. "Frank," she whispered. "The doctors say it wasn't his heart. It was something he smoked." My stomach twisted into a knot tighter than any I'd tied in Nam. "Something he smoked?" I echoed, my voice low, barely steady. "Those cigars. I gave them to him, Betty. They came from Sarah." Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear cutting through her grief. "Sarah? Your daughter?" she asked, as if the name itself was poison. I nodded, the weight of it sinking deeper. Sarah knew I didn't smoke my lungs, scarred from Agent Orange, couldn't handle a single puff. Yet she sent those cigars, wrapped in luxury, straight to my doorstep. I stepped into the hall, my boots heavy on the linoleum, and called Detective Laura Hayes. Her voice was crisp, no nonsense, like a drill sergeant's. "You're saying your daughter sent you cigars, and now your friend's in the ICU?" she asked. "That's right," I said, my throat tight. "The doctors found aotine in his system, a plant toxin, lethal in small doses. It was in the cigars." There was a pause. Then Laura's voice hardened. "Bring me that box, Frank, and the card." Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, the mahogany box staring at me like an accusation. Its silver trim caught the dim light, mocking my trust. I opened it, the scent of tobacco sharp and bitter, and pulled out the card again. "Happy birthday," it read, in Sarah's precise, deliberate script. I'd know that handwriting anywhere taught her to write her name in that same kitchen, her small hand gripping a pencil while her mother laughed. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who'd rather see me dead than call me Dad. My chest ached, not from the old war wounds, but from a betrayal that cut deeper than any shrapnel. I drove to the police station, a squat brick building a mile from my house, and handed the box to Laura. She lifted the lid, her gloved hands careful, like she was defusing a bomb. "We'll test it," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "But Frank, this is serious. If Sarah sent these, we're talking attempted murder." I swallowed hard, the word murder ringing in my ears like a mortar blast. "I know her handwriting," I said, my voice cold as the Texas night. "A father never forgets." Laura nodded, scribbling in her notebook, her pen scratching like a warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. My house felt too quiet, the shadows too deep. I sat in my recliner, staring at a photo on the mantel Sarah at 10, grinning beside me at a 4th of July barbecue, her face smeared with watermelon juice. I'd carried her on my shoulders that day, her laughter louder than the fireworks. Now, her gift had nearly killed Tom, a man who'd saved my life in Nam, who'd stood by me when the world turned dark. I clenched my fists, the scars on my knuckles whitening. Why, Sarah? Why now? I thought of her calls, always about money, my pension, my life insurance, the house. She hadn't asked about my health in years, but she'd asked about my will. I walked to the porch, the air cool and sharp, carrying the faint scent of dust and mesquite. The stars above Lubbock were bright, but they offered no answers. I gripped the railing, my breath ragged, each inhale a reminder of the war that still lived in my lungs. Sarah had aimed for me, but Tom had paid the price. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just greed. It was a declaration of war, one I'd have to fight with the same grit that got me through Vietnam. I wasn't just surviving for me anymore. I was surviving for Tom, for truth, for the man I'd sworn to be. The Texas dawn broke cold and gray, the kind of morning that feels like a warning. I sat at my kitchen table in Lubbock, the mahogany cigar box still squatting there, its silver trim dull under the fluorescent light. My hands trembled not from age, but from a rage that burned hotter than any firefight in Nam. Sarah, my own daughter, had sent death to my doorstep, and Tom Baxter, my brother in arms, was paying the price in a hospital bed 3 miles away. I couldn't just sit here, a tired old vet waiting for the next strike. I had to move, to fight, like I did in the jungles when the odds were stacked against me. I drove my pickup truck the 1 mile to the Lubbock police station, the box and card tucked under my arm like evidence from a war crime. Detective Laura Hayes met me in her cramped office, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and old paper. Her desk was a mess of files, but her eyes were sharp, cutting through my silence. "You're back, Frank," she said, leaning forward. "What have you got?" I slid the box across her desk. "This is what nearly killed Tom, and it was meant for me." She opened it, her gloved hands moving with the precision of a soldier checking a rifle. "We're running tests," she said, "but 18's rare. Whoever laced those cigars knew exactly what they were doing." I met her gaze, my voice low and steady. "Sarah knew. She's my daughter, but she's no stranger to greed." Laura's pen paused over her notebook. "That's a hell of an accusation, Frank. You got more than handwriting?" I didn't answer right away. My mind drifted to a memory Sarah, maybe 15, sitting on the porch swing, asking about my VA pension. "Dad, what happens to it when you're gone?" she'd said, her voice too casual, like she was asking about the weather. I'd laughed it off then, but now it felt like a bullet I hadn't dodged. I'll find more, I told Laura, my jaw tight. I'm not letting this go. Back home, I tore through my study, a small room cluttered with war relics and old bills. My late wife, Ellen, used to tease me for keeping every receipt, every letter, like a soldier guarding ammo. Now, those habits were my weapon. I found a folder of financial papers, my house deed, life insurance policy, Virginia benefits all neatly filed. But something was off. A document I didn't recognize, dated last month, showed a transfer attempt on my property. My signature was there, scrawled at the bottom, but it wasn't mine. The loops were too soft, the lines too hesitant, nothing like the bold strokes I'd honed signing orders in Nam. Sarah had forged it, her hand betraying her as surely as she'd betrayed me. I called Laura again, my voice shaking with fury. She's trying to steal my house, I said. Forged my signature on a deed transfer. Laura's tone sharpened. Bring it in, Frank. If it's fake, we'll prove it. But you need to be careful. She's escalating. I hung up, my pulse hammering like artillery fire. I walked to the mantel, where a photo of Sarah at her high school graduation stood, her smile bright under a Texas sunset. I'd paid for that cap and gown, worked overtime at the mill to give her a future. Now, she was clawing at my present, trying to bury me before my time. That evening, I drove to the VFW hall, needing the familiar clink of beer bottles and the low hum of vet talk to steady me. Old man Carter, another Nam vet, sat at the bar, his hands scarred from shrapnel. Heard about Tom, he said, his voice rough. You think it was an accident? I shook my head, the words bitter in my throat. No accident. Someone sent me those cigars, knowing I'd pass them on. Carter's eyes narrowed. Your girl, Sarah? She was here last year, asking about your pension. Didn't sit right with me. His words hit like a gut punch. Sarah hadn't just planned this, she'd been scouting her target for years. I left the hall, the Texas night wrapping around me like a shroud. My truck's headlights cut through the dark as I drove the 2 miles home, each mile heavy with memories. Sarah at 6, riding her bike in the driveway, crashing and crying until I bandaged her knee. Sarah at 20, begging for a loan to start fresh with Mike, her spineless husband. I'd given her everything, my time, my savings, my trust. And now, she'd traded it all for a shot at my grave. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my lungs burning with every breath. This wasn't just about money. It was personal, a war declared by my own blood. I'd survived ambushes in Nam, but this one I hadn't seen coming. Not yet, Sarah, I thought. You don't get to win. The Texas heat clung to my skin as I pulled my pickup truck into the gravel lot of Dusty's Diner, a weathered joint half a mile from the VFW hall where old vets like me traded stories over greasy burgers. It was noon, the sun high and merciless, but the fire in my chest burned hotter. Sarah had agreed to meet me here, her voice on the phone syrupy, fake, like she was playing the dutiful daughter. I knew better. The cigars laced with aotine, the forged deed, Tom Baxter fighting for breath in a hospital bed 3 miles away all pointed to her. My daughter, my blood, had aimed a knife at my heart, and I needed to look her in the eyes to know why. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and bacon, the jukebox humming an old Merle Haggard tune. Sarah sat in a corner booth, her tailored dress out of place among the cracked vinyl seats. Her dark hair was perfect, her smile a polished lie, but her eyes darted like a cornered animal's. I slid into the booth, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside. Sarah, I said, my voice low, like the calm before a firefight. Why'd you send those cigars? She tilted her head, her laugh high and brittle. Dad, it was just a gift. You're making a mountain out of nothing. Her words were smooth, but they cut like shrapnel, each one a reminder of the girl who once called me her hero. I leaned forward, my scarred knuckles pressing into the table. A gift? Tom's in the ICU because of your gift. Outine, Sarah. Poison. You knew my lungs can't take a puff, scarred from Agent Orange. Those cigars were meant for me. Her smile faltered, just for a second, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. You're paranoid, Dad, she said, her voice sharp now, like a blade unsheathed. Tom's old. Maybe he just got sick. I held her gaze, the same eyes I'd seen light up at 4th of July barbecues, now cold as a Lubbock winter. And the deed? I pressed. My signature, forged to steal my house. That an accident too? Sarah's face froze, her mask cracking like thin ice. She leaned back, crossing her arms, her diamond ring catching the light. You've always been like this, she hissed, her voice low enough that the waitress at the counter didn't turn. Clinging to your little house, your pension, your precious VA benefits. You never cared about my dreams, Dad. Never. Her words hit like a mortar round, exploding memories of her at 16, begging for a car I couldn't afford, or at 25, demanding a loan for her and Mike's failing business. I'd given her everything I could, worked double shifts at the mill, carried her through storms, and now she painted me as the villain. I kept my voice steady, though my heart screamed. Your dreams don't give you the right to kill me, Sarah. You sent death to my doorstep, wrapped in a mahogany box. Why? For a moment, silence stretched between us, heavy as the Texas heat. Then she laughed again, a sound that chilled my blood. Kill you? Dad, you're dramatic. I just wanted you to feel special. But her eyes betrayed her, flickering with something dark guilt or maybe fear. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, my voice cutting through the diner's hum. I survived Vietnam, Sarah. I faced worse than you. But you? You're breaking my heart worse than any war ever did. I walked out, the gravel crunching under my boots, my lungs burning with each breath. The 2-mile drive home was a blur, my mind replaying her words, her lies. I remembered Sarah at 10, drawing stick-figure families on my VA paperwork, her laughter filling our small house. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who saw me as an obstacle, not a father. Back home, I sat in my study, the forged deed on my desk like a battle map. I called Detective Laura Hayes, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. Laura, it's Frank. Sarah's not stopping. She's after everything, my house, my pension, my life. Laura's tone was sharp, like a bayonet. We're testing the deed, Frank. If it's forged, we've got her. But you need to watch your back. That night, I stood on my porch, the Texas stars bright above, but offering no comfort. My hands gripped the railing, the same railing Sarah used to lean against, begging for ice cream runs. Now, she was a ghost in my life, a shadow wielding poison and lies. I'd fought in jungles, dodged bullets, carried wounded men through hell. But this fight, with my own daughter, was a war I never trained for. My lungs rattled, a reminder of battles past, but my resolve hardened. Sarah had declared war, and I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd protect what was mine, not just my house, but my truth, my survival, my name. The Texas night pressed against my windows, heavy and still, as I sat in my Lubbock study, the forged deed lying on my desk like a landmine. My confrontation with Sarah at Dusty's diner, half a mile away, had left me raw, her cold eyes and sharper words slicing through the last threads of hope I'd clung to. She wasn't just after my house or my VA pension, she wanted me erased. My lungs rattled. a grim reminder of Agent Orange's lingering curse, but the pain in my chest was deeper, carved by my own daughter's betrayal. I'd survived Vietnam's jungles, but this war, fought in my own home, was tearing me apart. I powered up my old Dell computer, its hum filling the quiet room, and checked my email, a habit from years of tracking VA benefits. There, buried among spam, was a message forwarded by mistake, sent from Sarah's account to Mike Turner, her spineless husband. The subject line was blank, but the words inside hit like a mortar blast. Once we get guardianship, the house, pension, everything's ours. No more waiting. My blood ran cold. Guardianship. Sarah wasn't just forging signatures, she was plotting to declare me unfit, to strip me of my rights, using my war scars against me. She'd hired a doctor, some quack named Dr. Harlan, to claim I had PTSD so severe I couldn't manage my own affairs. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a rage that burned hotter than any firefight. I called Detective Laura Hayes, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Laura, it's Frank. Sarah's trying to get guardianship. She's got a doctor to lie, saying I'm broken from Nam." Laura's response was sharp, like a bayonet cutting through fog. "That's bold, Frank. If she's faking medical records, we can nail her. Send me that email." I forwarded it, my fingers heavy on the keys, and drove the 1-mile stretch to the police station, the Texas stars mocking me with their silence. Laura met me in her office, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and ink. She scanned the email, her eyes narrowing. "This is conspiracy, Frank. We'll subpoena the doctor's records, but you need to stay sharp. She's playing dirty." Back home, I paced my living room, the walls lined with photos of my squad, their faces frozen in time. I stopped at one me and Tom Baxter in 2069, grinning in the jungle, before Agent Orange stole our breath. Tom was still fighting for his life 3 miles away at Lubbock Memorial, all because of Sarah's poison. My mind flashed to her at 8, curled up on my lap during a thunderstorm, her small voice whispering, "Daddy, you'll keep me safe, right?" I'd promised her I would, always. Now, she was using my war wounds, my sacrifices, to lock me in a cage of her making. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a desecration of everything I'd fought for. I dug through my files, pulling out my VA medical records, pristine and detailed, showing no trace of PTSD. I'd faced nightmares, sure, but I'd never let them break me. Sarah's plan was to twist my service into a weapon, to paint me as a shell of a man to steal my life. I called my old friend Doc Wilson, a retired VA physician who'd treated me for years. "Frank," he said, his voice gravelly over the phone, "no one's contacted me about your mental state. This Dr. Harlan? Never heard of him. Sounds like a hired gun." His words confirmed my fear. Sarah was building a lie so big it could bury me alive. That night, I stood on my porch, the cool air carrying the faint scent of mesquite. My pickup truck sat in the driveway, its headlights dark, a loyal companion through decades of Texas dust. I thought of Sarah's wedding 5 years ago, when I'd walked her down the aisle, her hand trembling in mine. I'd thought it was nerves, but now I wondered if it was calculation, her eyes already on my pension, my house, my life. My grip tightened on the railing, my knuckles white as the scars from Nam. She wasn't just after money, she wanted to erase my legacy, to wipe clean the man who'd survived hell for her. I'd fought for my country, for my family, for her, and now I'd fight to keep my name. Sarah had thrown down the gauntlet, but I wasn't out of moves yet. The Texas night was silent, save for the faint hum of crickets outside my Lubbock home. But inside, my heart roared with a pain sharper than any wound from Vietnam. The email from Sarah, plotting to strip me of my rights with a fake doctor's lies, lay open on my computer screen, its words glowing like a traitor's signal flare. My lungs, scarred by Agent Orange, ached with each breath, but the real agony was deeper, a father's love, shredded by his own daughter's greed. I'd faced death in jungles, carried men through gunfire, but nothing prepared me for this. Sarah, my little girl, had planned my destruction long before the cigars. I stumbled to the attic, my boots heavy on the creaking stairs, driven by a need to confront the past. In a dusty box, buried under old VA forms, I found it a letter Sarah wrote at 10, her handwriting clumsy but earnest. "Dear Daddy," it began, "you're my hero forever. I'll always love you, even when you're old and gray." My fingers traced the faded ink, and for the first time since Ellen's funeral, tears burned my eyes. That girl, who'd clung to me during Texas storms, who'd drawn stick-figure families on my VA paperwork, was gone. In her place was a woman who'd schemed, even before her mother died, to claim my pension, my house, my life. The letter slipped from my hands, landing on the attic floor like a fallen soldier. I sank onto an old trunk, the attic's dim bulb casting shadows over photos of Sarah, her at 5, riding a bike I'd fixed in the garage, her at 12, laughing at a 4th of July barbecue, watermelon juice on her chin. Each memory was a knife, twisting deeper. I'd worked double shifts at the mill to buy her that bike, sold my old Chevy to pay for her college. I'd carried her through every storm, literal and not, promising to keep her safe. And now, she'd turned my sacrifices into weapons, using my war scars to paint me as a broken man. The betrayal wasn't just greed, it was a calculated erasure of everything I was. My hands shook as I clutched a bronze star from Nam, its cold metal grounding me. I remembered Tom Baxter, 3 miles away in Lubbock Memorial, his life hanging by a thread because of Sarah's poison. I'd saved Tom in 2069, dragging him from a burning chopper, and he'd saved me when the nightmares came. Now, Sarah had nearly taken him, just as she aimed to take me. I whispered to the empty attic, "Ellen, how did our girl become this?" My wife's absence was a void, her laughter once the glue of our family. Sarah had been her shadow, her joy. To know she'd planned this betrayal while Ellen was still alive, coughing through her final days, was a wound that screamed louder than any battlefield. I called Detective Laura Hayes, my voice raw but steady. "Laura, it's Frank. Sarah's been planning this for years, even before Ellen passed. That email, it's not just guardianship, it's everything." Laura's tone was sharp, like a rifle's click. "Frank, if she's been scheming that long, we need more evidence. Keep digging, and don't let her near you." I hung up, my pulse hammering like artillery. I drove the 1-mile stretch to the VFW hall, needing the familiar clink of beer bottles to steady my shaking hands. Old man Carter was there, nursing a whiskey. "Frank, you look like hell," he said, his eyes sharp. "Sarah's at it again, isn't she?" I nodded, my throat tight. "She's trying to lock me up, Carter. Says I'm unfit, using my war record against me." He spat on the floor. "That girl's got no honor. You watch your 6, Frank." Back home, I sat in my recliner, the letter from Sarah's childhood on my lap. The Texas stars outside offered no answers, just a cold, distant light. My lungs rattled, each breath a reminder of battles fought and survived. But this battle, with my own daughter, was different. She hadn't just sent poison or forged papers she'd planned to erase me, to steal not just my money but my name, my service, my story. I'd faced death in Nam, but this was worse, a death of trust, of love, of the girl I'd raised. I swore to the empty room, my voice a growl, "You won't win, Sarah. Not while I'm still breathing." This wasn't just survival. It was a fight for my soul. The Texas dawn broke over Lubbock, painting the sky a bruised purple, but my heart was heavier than the horizon. Sarah's betrayal, her poisoned cigars, forged deed, and guardianship plot had carved a wound deeper than any I'd carried from Vietnam. My lungs, scarred by Agent Orange, rattled with each breath, but my resolve was iron. I'd found her childhood letter, proof of a love long dead, and now I knew she'd planned my ruin even before Ellen's grave was cold. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore, I was fighting for my name, my truth, the man who'd survived hell for her. Sarah wanted a war, and I'd give her one she couldn't win. I sat in my study, the old Dell humming, and crafted a trap as precise as any ambush I'd set in Nam. Among my papers, I found worthless stock certificates from a failed oil venture in the 82nd, their faded ink promising a fortune to a greedy eye. I called Sarah, my voice deliberately frail, a wounded vet playing the part. "Sarah, I've been thinking," I said, letting my words tremble. "Found some old stocks from the oil days. Could be worth something. I need your help to sort them out." Her response was quick, too eager, like a vulture spotting carrion. "Of course, Dad. I'll come by tomorrow." I hung up, my jaw tight, knowing she'd take the bait. The next evening, I parked my pickup truck a quarter-mile down the road, hidden behind a mesquite thicket, and walked back to my house under the cover of dusk. I'd wired the garage with a hidden camera, its lens trained on my old Ford, the same truck Sarah used to ride in, laughing as we chased Texas sunsets. Detective Laura Hayes had set up an unmarked cruiser 2 blocks away, her team ready to move. I stood in the shadows of my backyard, the air thick with the scent of dust and betrayal, watching as Sarah's sedan crept into my driveway. She stepped out, her flashlight beam cutting the dark, her movements sharp, practiced, like a soldier on a mission. She popped the truck's hood, her hands working fast, cutting the brake line with a precision that chilled my blood. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a grief that burned hotter than rage. This was Sarah, my daughter, the girl I'd taught to ride a bike in this very driveway, now rigging my truck to kill me. The camera caught every move, her face clear under the garage light. I whispered to the night, "You've made your choice, Sarah." Sirens screamed as Laura's team roared in, their lights flashing like gunfire across the quiet street. Sarah froze, her flashlight dropping, her eyes wide with panic. "Frank Sullivan, step back!" Laura shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Officers swarmed, pinning Sarah's arms, her scream raw and jagged as they cuffed her. "Dad!" she yelled, her voice breaking. "Tell them it's a mistake!" I stepped into the light, my boots steady on the gravel, my gaze locked on hers. "No mistake, Sarah," I said, my voice cold as the Texas dawn. "You cut my brakes, you sent poison to my door, you tried to steal my life." Her face crumpled, not with remorse, but with the rage of a plan undone. "You never gave me anything," she spat, twisting against the cuffs. "You hoarded it all, your money, your pride." I shook my head, the weight of her words heavy but not enough to break me. "I gave you everything, Sarah. My love, my time, my trust. You chose to throw it away." The neighbors gathered, their murmurs rising like a distant storm. Mrs. Turner from across the street clutched her robe, her eyes wide with shock. I hated the spectacle, but there was no hiding now. Laura approached, her face grim. "We've got it all on tape, Frank. The brake line, the cigars, the forged deed. She's done." I nodded, my throat tight, my lungs burning with each breath. Sarah was led to the cruiser, her head bowed, her dark hair falling like a curtain over her face. I remembered her at 6, running to me after a scraped knee, her trust absolute. That girl was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd gambled my life and lost. As the cruiser's tail lights faded, I stood alone in my driveway, the Texas air cool against my skin. My truck sat silent, its hood still open, a witness to my daughter's fall. I'd survived Vietnam, carried men through fire, but this victory felt hollow. Sarah hadn't just tried to kill me, she'd killed the last piece of the family I'd fought for. But I was still here, still breathing, still Frank Sullivan. And that was a truth she couldn't steal. The Texas sun sank low over Lubbock, casting a warm glow across my small garden, where tomato vines now climbed the stakes I'd hammered in with my own hands. My pickup truck, its brake line repaired, sat quietly in the driveway, a survivor like me. Sarah was gone, her trial looming, her betrayal poisoned cigars, forged deeds, guardianship plots etched into my heart like shrapnel scars from Vietnam. At 68, my lungs still rattled from Agent Orange, but I'd outlived her schemes. I'd fought for my name, my truth, and won, but the cost was heavy. My daughter, once my light, was now a shadow I'd never erase. I started fixing things first, the truck, then the porch steps, each nail a small defiance against the pain. At the VFW hall, 2 miles away, I began teaching young vets to rebuild engines, their hands eager, their eyes carrying the same ghosts I'd known in Nam. Tom Baxter, recovering slowly, joined us one evening, his laugh weaker but alive. "You're a stubborn bastard, Frank," he rasped, clapping my shoulder. I smiled, but my heart ached. Survival wasn't victory, it was carrying the scars forward, finding purpose in the ordinary. I'd learned that peace doesn't come from verdicts or vengeance. It creeps in through calloused hands, shared stories, and the quiet of a Texas dusk. For you see veterani out there, the lesson is simple. Betrayal cuts deep, but your strength forged in battle, tempered by time, can rebuild what's broken. Hold fast to your truth, your community, your fight. If this story moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your own battles below. Your voice matters, just as mine did.